And here is some more very problematic evidence. Let none of you say, I have got the whole Quran. Much of it is gone. Simply say, I have got what has survived.
When Ibn Umar, son of the second Muslim caliph, heard people declaring that they knew the entire Quran, he said to them, let none of you say, I have learned the whole of the Quran. For how does he know what the whole of it is, when much of it has disappeared? Let him rather say, I have learned what remains thereof.
Okay, so before I respond to this, we need to know first about the abrogation in Quran. Abrogation in Quran means that Allah substitute a verse or cause it to be forgotten by His will. Because Quran is the book which He revealed, He do what He wills in His book. Allah says, we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten except that we bring forth one better than it or similar to it. Do you not know that Allah is over all things competent? And even Allah told Prophet Muhammad about abrogation from the very early period of Quran revelation. In Surat Al-Ala, which is the 8th surah in order of revelation and one of the very first surahs of Quran, Allah says to Prophet Muhammad, we will make you recite and you will not forget except what Allah should will. So here Allah is telling Prophet Muhammad from very early period of revelation that he will not forget except what Allah wills. This means that abrogation is done by will of Allah. So there is a big difference between abrogation and corruption. Abrogation is done by a divine will from Allah Himself, while corruption is done by humans. The biggest example of corruption is the Bible, which is still being edited and changed. And abrogation is done by Allah during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, not after him. Now regarding the hadith which he mentioned,
let none of you say, I have got the whole Quran. Much of it is gone. Simply say, I have got what has survived.
When Ibn Umar, son of the second Muslim caliph, heard people declaring that they knew the entire Quran, he said to them, let none of you say, I have learned the whole of the Quran. For how does he know what the whole of it is, when much of it has disappeared? Let him rather say, I have learned what remains thereof.
First of all, he is being dishonest here, because the translation of this part is false. There is no survived in the original Arabic text. The real translation should be apparent, not survived. This hadith is speaking about the abrogation in Quran, i.e. abrogation which is done by divine will of Allah. And here are the evidences.
So, the reality of this narration of Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu is that Imam Suyuti rahimahullah brings this narration under the chapter of section 47 about the abrogating and abrogated. As we can see clear as daylight, this indicates the hadith of Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu has to do with the parts which was abrogated from the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu is talking about nasikh and mansukh, not the Quran has been lost as these liars alleged. This is clear from the title which was written by Imam Suyuti rahimahullah. And Abu Ubaid, even before Imam Suyuti rahimahullah, brings this narration under the chapter of what has been abrogated from the Quran after its revelation and it's not established in the copies, i.e. the copies of Quran. So as you can see clear as daylight, Imam Abu Ubaid rahimahullah brings this narration under this chapter. This means this narration has to do with the abrogation, what was abrogated from the parts of the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, Imam Allama al-Alusi, the great classical Islamic scholar, he said similarly, verily, they, i.e. the people of Sunnah, have agreed on there being no loss in the Quran, as is continuously reported like we today find between the two bindings. Yes, during the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the part which was not reported continuously and was rather abrogated was dropped. And to this relate that which is reported by Abu Ubaid from Ibn Umar, who said, none of you should say that he has taken the whole of Quran. How could he know what all of it was? A lot of the Quran has been passed by. Let him say, instead I have taken of the Quran that became apparent, clear as daylight. We have, even before Imam Suyuti, Abu Ubaid rahimahullah, then we have Imam Suyuti, then we have Imam Alusi. All of them said this hadith of Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhu is indicating and pointing out the abrogate parts of the Quran. It has to do with the abrogation, not as these idiots they claim that the Quran has been lost.
Now here is the clear-cut, absolute evidence that this hadith is about abrogation, i.e., the parts which were abrogated from the Quran by Allah Himself. Not about parts of Quran being lost as he claims. We will see how Abdullah ibn Umar, the narrator of this hadith, says that he is speaking about abrogation.
So Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, he wrote, Ibn al-Durayd has narrated a report of Ibn Umar that he used to dislike the person who said, I have recited the whole of the Quran. He, Ibn Umar, used to say, but a part of the Quran has been abrogated. It's clear as daylight, clear as daylight.
So as we can see that these hadiths have a different wording. And this wording is abrogated instead of gone. This means that the word gone in this narration means abrogated, not lost or corrupted. And then the scholar Ibn Hajar continues to say, and none of that contradicts the narration of this chapter because all of that are from what was abrogated in recitation during the lifetime of the Prophet. So this clearly means that in this narration, Ibn Umar was speaking about parts of the Quran which were abrogated by Allah Himself during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad. Ibn Umar was not speaking about parts of Quran being lost as this guy is claiming.
Now the question arises, did Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu held the view or believe that Quran has been lost, much of the Quran has been lost? The answer is no, no, no. The evidence is, this particular narration totally demonstrate that Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu believed in preservation of Quran. So the hadith which was narrated in Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'ad was reported from Khalid bin Sumayr. He said, Al-Hajjaj delivered sermon and said, verily Ibn Zubayr distorted the book of Allah, i.e. the Quran. So Ibn Umar, Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, remember the individual whom they accused of believing that Quran was distorted and changed and so on and so forth. Abdullah bin Umar, this was the reply of Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, wa ardahu, said, you lied, he will be not able to do that, nor you along with him. So as we can see clearly as daylight, he totally believed in the preservation of Quran, held the view of the Quran is preserved, preservation of Quran.
Now let's see another hadiths he quoted.
Additionally, we have evidence from Sahih Muslim for certain surahs being forgotten.
And so now we want to look at some passages from Islamic sources. And there are more examples we can give, but I'm going to give an example of Muslim sources showing that entire chapters were lost, then that large passages were lost, then that verses were lost, and then even that phrases were lost. So this is just to show that there are various kinds of material coming up missing here. So I'm going to read Sahih Muslim 2286. What's better than Sahih Muslim, right? This is as good as it gets in Islam,
exactly.
Right?
Muslim and Bukhari.
Yeah. So Sahih Muslim 2286. Abu Musa al-Ashari sent for the reciters of Basra. They came to him, and they were 300 in number. So this is Abu Musa, companion of Muhammad, who later on is asked for the reciters of Basra. They come to him. And so finally these reciters get to hear from an actual companion of Muhammad. And they recited the Quran, and he said, notice, the reciters recite the Quran to a companion of Muhammad. And he said, you are the best among the inhabitants of Basra, for you are the reciters among them. So continue to recite it. But bear in mind that your reciting for a long time may not harden your hearts, as were hardened the hearts of those before you. He's talking about Muslims before them, hardening their hearts. He's warning the reciters not to harden their hearts. And what does he say? We used to recite a surah which resembled in length and severity to Surah Barat.
Chapter 9, basically.
Yeah, that's 129 verses.
Correct.
So it's a 129 verse long chapter. I have, however, forgotten it, with the exception of this which I remember out of it. So he remembers a passage from this surah. He remembers this. If there were two valleys full of riches for the son of Adam, he would long for a third valley, and nothing would fill the stomach of the son of Adam but dust. Now, Al-Fadi, you know the Quran. Where is that in our Quran?
It's no longer there.
Wait a minute. Abu Musa, it's a companion of Muhammad.
Shadi mentioned it. Yeah, that's
He's
right.
talking to the reciters of Basra, and he says he remembers this being a surah of the Quran, a surah that's as long as Surah 9.
So he quoted this hadith, and he is implying that the forgetting of a surah here means that part of the Quran was lost. He is implying that this is kind of corruption. However, this is false. Because this hadith is also about abrogation made by Allah. And as we said earlier, that abrogation is made by divine will from Allah Himself. And it is different from corruption. Here are the evidences. First of all, the English translation of this hadith is not accurate. You will find this Arabic word being translated to English as "I have forgotten it." However, this translation is not accurate. Because this Arabic word means "I was caused to forget it." So the correct translation should be "I was caused to forget it" instead of "I have forgotten it." And this makes a huge difference for a simple reason. When Abu Musa, the companion of Prophet Muhammad, said "I was caused to forget it," this means that he was caused to forget it by Allah. Because Allah Himself said in Quran that He causes verses to be forgotten. Allah says, we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten except that we bring forth one better than it or similar to it. And this is a kind of abrogation, not corruption. So here Abu Musa says that he was caused to forget a surah. And Allah already said that He causes verses to be forgotten. So here Abu Musa was confirming what Allah already said in the Quran. Now a very smart person might claim that Abu Musa said this before this verse was revealed. The answer is that Abu Musa said this after the revelation of this verse. Because he was speaking to Muslim inhabitants of Basra in Iraq. Which means after death of Prophet Muhammad and after full revelation of Quran. So when Abu Musa said that he was caused to forget it, he was referring to Quran chapter 2 verse 106, in which Allah said that He causes verses to be forgotten. Even Allah told Prophet Muhammad from the very early period of Quran revelation that He will cause verses to be forgotten by His will. Allah said in Surat Al-Ala, which is the 8th surah in order of revelation and one of the very first surahs of Quran, Allah says to Prophet Muhammad, we will make you recite and you will not forget except what Allah should will. Even Al-Suyuti, who was a great scholar in the 15th century, said that this hadith of Abu Musa is about abrogation and about the verses which Allah causes to be forgotten. He says, we used to recite a surah which resembled in length and severity to Bara, and I was caused to forget it. This is from the verses which were abrogated in recitation, that was referred to by the saying of Allah, we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten. So Allah used to cause people to forget the verses after they memorized it and remove it from their hearts. And this occurred during the lifetime of the Prophet, where no abrogation after him. Al-Qurtubi said, no confusion should occur from this hadith or one similar to it, that parts of Quran were lost. This is false. Allah said, we have revealed the reminder and we are its protectors. Now here is the absolute evidence that this hadith is about abrogation. We will see how Abu Musa himself said in another narration that this surah was abrogated, not lost as David Wood falsely claims. A great scholar in the 9th century, called Abu Jafar al-Tahawi, compiled an authentic narration which says the following. Narrated from Abu Musa al-Ashari, that he said, a surah that was like surah of Bara, have been revealed and then abrogated. So as we can clearly see here, that Abu Musa says that this surah was abrogated, not lost. And abrogation means that Allah takes out of Quran whatever He wills. Big difference between being abrogated and being lost. In conclusion, Abu Musa said that he was caused to forget this surah, which means caused to forget by Allah Himself. Allah Himself said that He causes verses to be forgotten as abrogation. Abu Musa himself said in another narration that this surah was abrogated by Allah Himself. So the hadith of Abu Musa is confirmation and evidence for Quran, not evidence against Quran. Now we will see how huge parts of Bible were lost. We will see how Paul wrote many letters which were lost. And even entire books of the Bible have been lost. Not just a paragraph or two.
Paul, whom they, revive as saint, who met Jesus, and he wrote many epistles, and they are canonized and included as part of Bible. You know that this guy, Paul, he have referenced, of course, his epistles are canonized and included as part of the Bible. There are lots of epistles he wrote. For example, Corinthians, Thessalonians, Galatians, Timothy. Now the question arises, if this, the epistles written by Paul is canonized and is part of Bible, what about the parts that Paul referenced in his epistles? Why are they missing? He referenced some epistles in his writings. Where are those epistles? Let us see. A first epistle to Corinth referenced at 1 Corinthians 5:9. Where is that epistle? Why is it missing? We know Paul allegedly wrote many epistles, and these are canonized and is part of Bible. But what about the other parts which he have referenced? A third epistle to Corinthians, also called the civil letter, referenced at 2 Corinthians 2:4 and 2 Corinthians 7:8-9. The epistle to Laodiceans, referenced at Colossians 4:16. What is this epistle? Why is it not canonized and it is part of Bible? Why is this missing epistle? Question. These are all missing epistles which he referenced. These are the epistles he referenced. But where are these epistles? Where have they gone? Where have they gone? This is the question. Where have they gone? Why they are not canonized? You see, people whose house is made up of glass should not throw stones at others. This is the hypocrisy and double standard of these people. They always attack Quran, preservation of Quran, history of Quran, transmission of Quran, everything. But their own scripture is completely messed up. And yet they have audacity and guts to attack Islam.
And here is Mark Licona saying that he would like to have discussion to change the Bible if they found lost letters of Paul.
Paul wrote 3 or 4 letters to the church at Corinth. We only have 2. In one of Paul's prison epistles, he mentions the letter that he wrote to the church of Laodicea. Do we have it? Well, we don't have any letter that's addressed to the church of Laodicea. There's some different theories. Some think that the Ephesians was a circular letter that was passed to many different churches, or it was a generic letter, and that on one of those, Paul wrote to the church at Ephesus, but he could have put to the church at Laodicea and sent the same letter to the Laodicean church. We don't know. But we could be missing a letter to the church at Laodicea. We are certainly missing 1, if not 2 letters to the church at Corinth. So I think that would be really interesting. So we do have some questions that would be like that. Do I think we're going to find such a letter? Probably not. But if we did, we'd have to have some discussions on that, wouldn't we?
Now here are entire books from the Bible which were lost. These books are mentioned by Bible authors. And even Bible authors tell us to read these books. And some of these books are supposedly written by prophets. Yet these books are missing. Book of the Covenant, Book of the Wars of the Lord, Book of Samuel the Seer, and Book of Nathan the Prophet, and Book of Gad the Seer. Here the author is telling us to read these 3 books. Book of Nathan the Prophet, and Prophecy of Ahir the Shilonite, and the Visions of Iddo the Seer. These 3 books are supposedly written by prophets. So why they are not part of the Bible? Book of Acts of Solomon, Book of Shema the Prophet. Now this book is written by a prophet named Shema. So why this book is not part of the Bible? The answer is because it is lost. Book of Iddo genealogies. Where are all these books and why they are not part of the Bible? The Bible authors here are clearly implying that these books were written by prophets. So why they are missing? These books are supposed to be canonical, i.e. part of the Bible. Because when Bible authors mention Book of Chronicles, we do find Book of Chronicles in the Bible. So when they mentioned these books, we should also find these books in the Bible.